Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to a very special bonus episode of Meet Us at Molly's. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Bryna. Gina, unfortunately, cannot be with us tonight, but that is okay because I have two very, very special guests, Chicago med writers, Jeff Drayer and Stephen Hootstein. Guys, how are you?
Doing good.
Great. We're just up them. A lot of that's just for show.
Well, it's been, I know, quite a year since we've had you guys last on here. So how have you guys been? Hanging in there?
Yeah. Been working from home. We're already working on season 7.
Really? Already? Has the writer's room opened back up yet?
It was never shuts down.
Really?
It's like a Wawa convenience store.
Yeah, I think we took like 3 days off after season 6. Is that right? And then
something like that.
Up again. Yep.
What's it been like? Because I know, I'm assuming it's still been virtual this whole time.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's it been like being in a virtual writer's room compared to like the normal writer's room?
For me, it's a lot harder to keep concentration. There's a lot of distraction and just you miss the shared space, the constant view of a whiteboard instead of toggling back and forth. What else do I miss? Just all the non-verbal cues that you can't pick up on Zoom.
Yeah, you can't have small side conversations. You can't just talk to anybody. Everything you say is to everyone. So
yeah,
it's a little tougher. You can't take a 10-minute break and go off to the side and work stuff out. It's all just kind of on the big screen all the time.
All the time.
It's definitely a learning curve that is still like seemingly going straight up. When's this going to level out and we're going to master the Zoom? I don't know. Maybe never.
I know we were just kind of talking about before we started recording that, it looks like things are finally starting to open back up and like normal life is coming back. Have you guys heard, like, will you guys actually be back in a writer's room for season 7 or you still don't know yet?
No word yet. No one's saying anything. Who knows?
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I think I don't even know who all the decision makers are on that. I think collectively, for the most part, I mean, we would hope that it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know who is going to make that call.
Right. So Zoom for now.
Zoom for now.
Now. Yep.
So kind of going off of that, I mean, I know to say this season just in general has been different would be an understatement. I mean, there were less episodes, there were all these filming restrictions, but like now that the season complete, I would love to know, like, what are some of the challenges about making the season happen from the writing perspective?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge was having lots of continuity in our stories. It's just so hard when you're just all apart to make everything, all the personal stories flow together as well as we would like. You just don't have that constant ability to walk into someone else's office and talk to them about things. And it just makes it all a little choppier and a little less all of one piece, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely took longer to write. Not the actual writing,
Right.
Which that might actually have taken less time just because without the distractions of being in the office, but the process of breaking an episode was, I felt, was a little more laborious.
And the start of the season was very difficult, like just figuring out how to deal with COVID, how to do this all on Zoom and get all our stories together. And
we were shooting in the dark like everyone else and like we knew when we were supposed to start shooting and we knew kind of when we were supposed to start airing and we wanted to be current to that moment, but that was
Right.
a month in the future. And then, I think you can speak to, from what I've read about other medical shows as well, you're trying to figure out how you're going to handle the subject matter, like how much is too much considering people are living it every day. how much do you want to, every show, that's right. I apologize. Every show had to do that calculus for themselves. I'm going to drop for a second there, Jeff, pick this up.
This is what doing Zoom writer's room is like.
Exactly.
Children breaking things in the background all day.
Kind of going off of that, you were talking about the beginning of this season. Obviously, going back to last season, you guys got cut a few episodes because of the shutdown. So, like, were the first few episodes of season 6 similar to the ones you guys had already written for the end of season 5?
I mean, yes and no. We took some of the stories and repurposed them,
right?
For the new season. But of course, all of a sudden, it was in a hospital where there was coronavirus and
right.
All this stuff had happened in the meantime. So it, like, on the one hand, it seemed like it would be stupid to just come in and tell another story about somebody with an ulcer and whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you didn't want to just COVID. And
right.
while everybody's living through it, I think, it was like striking the balance between the two of them. So it was old stories newly redone to sort of reflect the new reality, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as hard and still challenging, as we all know, like, the medical response to COVID from a storytelling standpoint, it can be pretty limiting or repetitive. There's not a lot of responses to it. Mm-hmm. So we quickly realized we couldn't spend a lot of time treating COVID patients,
Right.
It was nice to have 10 already done stories to just like take and put in our episodes.
We're finding that would be really helpful.
Right.
At the start of season 7.
And kind of what you guys were also talking about too. I mean, like, this season more than ever, like, you guys had to pay attention to like what was going on in the country and use that in your storytelling. So I'm just curious, like, how did that affect how you guys approached writing this season? Because more than ever, like I said, you're having to pay attention to what's going on in the world and use that to tell your stories that are going to be airing in a month or two from now.
When also, if you'll remember, like, the George Floyd protests and
mm-hmm.
How everything was up in the air, last summer, and Dick, really wanted to, as a show that is ripped from the headlines, wanted to, speak to that common conversation. So we had both the COVID stories to deal with, and then try to make a concerted effort to stay current, with what was happening mm-hmm. in the world. So that was another, thing. We would touch on from episode to episode. Dick did a great job of, like, we would have, when we started out, and we're still doing them to this day, every few weeks, there'll be kind of like a town hall meeting where he'll bring experts and personalities and thinkers, public intellectuals, and have them address the collective writing staff of the Dick Wolf universe to talk about some of these issues. And that was actually one of the more, interesting parts of being a writer on one of his shows this year.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. And I know because of COVID protocols, it obviously took longer to film episodes, which meant there were gaps in air date schedules. Like, obviously, there were 2 episodes in November, and then we didn't get episode 3 till the middle of January. So, like, did that affect how you guys approached writing this season, or did you guys just write it as, like, oh, it's all one season and we're not paying attention to air dates whatsoever?
I mean, we wrote it. I think there was supposed to be a gap, like, between episodes 5 and 6, and then didn't we get shut down for 2 weeks Yeah, and then everything fell apart. And then we were just happy to be getting episodes done.
Yeah.
It was really a remarkable effort by the production crew. We had one shutdown near the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't think we really had another day. And by the time we started, normally traditionally we're an 8-day shoot. I think most hour-long dramas are.
Mm-hmm.
And we initially budgeted as much as 10 days. That was the thought, that it was how long it was going to take. And to to all the crew's credit, we got it back down to 8 days somehow.
Wow.
I don't know how they did it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
really impressive.
Yeah, that's really impressive. I was assuming they were still taking 10. I knew it had kind of taken 10 in the beginning, but that's crazy that they got it down back to 8.
Yeah, somehow they figured out how to do it, and makes you wonder what we were doing wrong all those years.
Yeah, for sure. So moving kind of out of the COVID stuff and into storylines, I guess we just kind of have to address this elephant in the room. I know there was news that came out recently that Torrey and Yaya are both leaving the show at the end of the season. I'm just curious, when did you guys find out they were leaving the show?
When was it on deadline? I think that, do we find out?
It was like 2 weeks ago. It was on deadline.
2 weeks and a couple hours.
Oh, so you guys found out like right before that it was that we're leaving.
I think we found out for certain right as it was being announced, right? There had been some discussion
rumors,
here.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Nothing for certain until it happened.
This was I can't, we don't know. We don't know. We were the last to know, unfortunately, seemingly. We should be maybe the first to know. And I don't know how much we could speak to it, but certainly all of the original cast members' contracts, had originally signed season contracts. So I think even going into the season, or certainly mid-season, we knew that not every it's the odds are that we were going to say farewell to somebody. I honestly don't know how they make those decisions. So. Right.
But you guys, I guess, then follow-up question, you guys didn't write the end of their seasons knowing that they were leaving the show. You wrote the end of the finale storylines are wrapped up kind of the way they're going to be wrapped up. You didn't know they were leaving with that in mind.
We knew there was a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So the endings are, now knowing what you know when you watch it, I think it'll make sense, but it wasn't the kind of thing where you knew for sure, and we've been spending a season working out how to
write them out,
anything like that. So but I like it when you watch the episode, it still feels pretty satisfying, I think.
So let's start with Will. So Will has had quite the season, which obviously it started off with him saying goodbye to Hannah because she couldn't, be there and, keep her sober. And I know this is probably a storyline you guys felt like you had to formally wrap up since season 5 ended earlier than expected. But was there ever a discussion in the writer's room about her sticking around longer, or you knew that was kind of the end?
I mean, there were a lot of discussions. There was a very different end to season 5 had it gone all the way through, and I don't know. We talked for a while about whether there might be a proposal. There were all sorts of stuff was on the table, and then once that didn't happen, and then we came back, and it was the new season, and things sort of shifted a different way. But yeah, who knows what would have happened had we finished the season last year.
That's interesting that you say that, because we were talking about when that episode airs and Will tells her that he loves her. We were like, whoa, that kind of felt out of left field. So it's interesting that you say that there was discussions around like, oh, was somebody going to propose? Like that's interesting.
Yeah. There were a few different ways it could have gone, but
this is the one that worked.
Yeah, this is the one that happened. Yeah.
So I know a majority of the season obviously shows Will working on this clinical trial, and you guys have never really done a clinical trial storyline until this season. And I'm curious, what made exploring that part of medicine so appealing to you guys?
I've been trying to do a clinical trial story since season 2, and everybody said it would be too difficult, and it ended up being very difficult. So maybe they were right and I was wrong all along. But it's so a part of what's going on in medicine right now, and there's such a huge intersection between industry and medicine and the different agendas, and so many ways that medical professionals can get caught up in the middle of it. And I don't know, there's such a good side of it as someone who used to be involved in clinical trials myself. I'm very pro clinical trial, but at the same time, there's a lot of ways that can go wrong, as we explored. So, it always seemed to me like there's lots of drama there. And I think there was. We got a pretty good season for Will out of it.
I'm curious, what made it so difficult? Because I know you said you wanted to be doing it for a while and everyone's like, oh, it's so difficult, but what made it actually so difficult?
I mean, I think being even-handed, there's a propensity to want to show the pharmaceutical company as the bad guy who's just in it for the money or whatever, but that's not necessarily the case, and they're making life-saving drugs, but at the same time, you want our doctors to be the heroes. Mm-hmm. And finding a new issue every week that Will's dealing with, where it's not just the same thing over and over again, and how you can get these ethical dilemmas within the confines of this this trial. It's it's a little challenge every week to find a new way, but we have some smart medical consultants that know a lot about this stuff, so they helped a lot.
Thank goodness. Yeah. All on us.
I know there are quite a few instances in the season where Will's asked, whether or not he'd consider leaving the ED for clinical trials, and he's like, oh, well, I'd be open to it. Is that something you guys have talked about further exploring, or is this kind of most likely seem like the end of Will's time with clinical trials?
You never want to say never, but I think Will's, I think as we all love Will for, he leads with his heart, and perhaps he's a guy whose emotions aren't necessarily best suited by, in the position of having the rigor of, what a clinical trial requires from its, what do you call it? It's not a practitioner. It's a, what was it? What?
PI, investigator.
Yeah, investigator.
So basically never. Okay. Okay. So something else we debated a lot this season on our podcast is after Will unblinds the patient, he ends up asking Sabrina out for drinks, and she surprisingly accepts. We want to know, was that supposed to be him covering his ass for unblinding the patient and not wanting her to know, or did he actually like her in that moment and wanted to ask her out because he liked her?
I think there's a little bit of both, I guess, but I think Will liked her. I think Will would have been happy if things had worked out between the two of them, and which he kept trying to have happen, but then Will always ends up sticking his foot in things before he can help himself. So
yeah, we were even surprised that she was willing last week to take him back, and we were like, girl, what are you doing? Why would you do that?
I was saying the same thing, but then you look at that smile, you're like, come on, of course you gotta give Will another chance.
But
yeah, I think I would give Will another chance all the time. But I don't know if I was Sabrina, I would do that.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, he's ruining his career and her career. I don't know. Doesn't sit well with me, but yeah. So another kind of big part of Will's storyline this season is he decided to step in and help Natalie's mom through all this stuff going on with her heart. Is the reason he's being so eager to help her because he loves Natalie and obviously always will love Natalie even though they're not together, or can he just honestly not resist a good scandal?
He loves Natalie. I mean, come on, I'm the biggest fan of Manstead on the writing staff for sure, and maybe in all of Los Angeles.
He's been a Manstead stan from the start.
I think everything's about Manstead, but I think he loves her and he would do anything for her, and whether they're friends or dating or whatever, I don't think he can help himself.
Jeff, I was going to say, I think listeners of our podcast are going to be very happy to hear you're a big Manstead stan, because I know a lot of our listeners are too. And I know we joke a lot about.
Phrase that question. That was very loaded.
It's true, though. He seems to really like a good scandal. That's all we're saying. And I know we joke a lot about Will and Natalie doing shady stuff all the time, but like, I mean, could part of you think, honestly, like part of his willingness to help Natalie be from the fact that he never really faced a consequence in all of his time at Med? I'm serious.
You caught on.
I mean,
you know, he's probably he hasn't been, you know, as a puppy, he hasn't been properly trained. Probably there should have been some more consequences. I know Goodwin's. Maybe she should have tried wrapping him on his nose with a newspaper. I don't know.
I don't know if he still would have learned, though. Don't know. And speaking of Natalie, I mean, kind of on her other side of this love triangle, another one of the big storylines was like this blossoming relationship with Crockett. And I mean, we kind of started to see that at the end of last season, but was it always the plan for them to get together as quickly as they did in this season?
We started, it started percolating, I think, sometime late season 5. I think they felt like there was good physical chemistry. And so, it's so hard to like, you know, to try to figure out the counterfactual of like how quickly or, you know, their relationship would have happened if there wasn't, you know, if we hadn't had COVID into the world. Maybe it helped press the accelerator. I don't know.
I think at one point we were going to end last season with her knocking on his door, right? Was that?
Yeah, there was you know, yeah, what we do 19 the previous season out of 22.
1920.
20, yeah, it was 20 last season.
Yeah.
So I think if you remember, like 18 or 19, you know, was when Natalie found out, you know, about Crockett's past, and so that was, I think, you know, intended to like start them moving towards each other. I just don't know at what kind of at how quickly they were going to do so.
Right.
How did you feel about their chemistry?
I loved it. Listen, last season I saw it happening and I said something about it on the podcast, how I was like intrigued by it, and I got so much shit for it from all the Manstead stands because everyone's like, no, it's going to be Manstead. I was like, listen, I'm just saying if they go that way, I'm not opposed to it. And then this season happened and I'm not wrong. I was not wrong. I definitely liked the Mansell of it all.
I think Tori is so likable as an actress that, like, you know, not to say whoever you put with her, because Dominic's also very good, but just like she like just like to watch her, and they seem to have such an easy time together. I always liked the scenes they had together and their little bantery stuff, and I thought they were pretty cute.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed them. But speaking of Crockett's past, we briefly got to meet his ex-wife this season. Very, very briefly. And I'm curious, why did you guys have her show up now? And like, why didn't we see more of her? Because I would have sworn to you that she would have showed up again by the end of the season. And I'm kind of surprised she hasn't.
She's good. Right? You're good. It seems like everything you point to was like the topic of like 5 weeks ago.
I was gonna say, do we spend a month talking about this?
Yeah. And I'd love to walk you through all of it, but I can't because I don't remember. But we talked about it a lot.
Yeah, it's a mystery. At some point, right? We had like a an arc for her, and she was moving to Chicago, but why was she moving to Chicago? We couldn't quite figure it out. And you know, it seemed very juicy, but then once we got into the nuts and bolts of it, that, you know, it was hard to explain exactly what she, you know, and she seemed more and more like a stalker the more we like kind of got into what she was doing there. And so it like
just kind of fell off.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're like, well, it would certainly be easy if she left.
That makes so much more sense though, because something we've wondered too for the longest time is like, why did she come all the way to Chicago just to bring him that box of stuff? Like, why didn't she just mail it to him? That was our question on our minds. And that makes so much more sense.
Box. No.
So much more sense.
The neighborhood. The neighborhood.
We were just like, why? Like, it didn't make sense to us, but that makes so much more sense. So switching gears a little bit, let's talk about Ethan for a second, because Ethan has also had quite the season as well. I mean, we saw in like right off the bat, he got promoted to chief of the ED. Was it always going to be Ethan, or did you guys ever consider going with someone else once Lanik stepped down?
I think Ethan. I think it was pretty much always going to be Ethan. I mean, we spent a day talking about like who the candidates would possibly be, and then that kind of formed the story, the basis of the story, where we had Will and Ethan. Certainly at the very, very beginning of the season, you know, vying for this thing. But we felt like it was if we were at the hospital and Goodwin, we would make the same decision she would make in naming Ethan. And, you know, to his credit, kind of, you know, for, you know, Brian T and Ethan, you know, it's a difficult position to put that character in, because now all of a sudden he's got to be the guy who's saying no and opposing all of our doctors and our heroes, and he's got to toe it, you know. It's hard to maintain your likability, you know, through that. But, you know, Brian's such a professional, you know, that, I don't know, I think I really liked some of those storylines, personally.
Yeah, I did too. I know a lot of people on the internet, at least, were giving him a lot of shit all season because it seemed like he was such a hard ass and stuff. But I think his struggles through trying to figure out like his place in the ED, now that he's not just a colleague, he's the boss of some people. Like, I don't know. I personally felt like at moments that it was really compelling, but I also felt at moments I was like, Ethan, what are you doing? You're being such a dick for no reason. Like, what are you doing? But I don't know. I personally thought it was compelling too. I like the journey that Ethan's had this season.
Oh, good. I that was one of my. I don't know. He's so by the rules that, you know, you can just see where the conflict's going to come when you put him in charge, and you got this hospital of doctors that sometimes go outside the lines or whatever. Like, you know, it makes for a lot of conflict, and it's right. It's a challenge to keep everybody likable, and that was. I hope we succeeded.
Yeah, and I think it forced him to re-look at like all of his relationships, because certain aspects of all of his relationships with everybody in the ED changed, whether it was April, who obviously he had the past with, or Will, who he just beat out for that position. I don't know. I thought it was really interesting. I personally liked it. I know a lot of people still don't like Ethan, but I don't know. I do. So, also something that came up a lot on our podcast was there are these like throughout the season, there's been these like little tiny like flirty moments between Verani and Ethan. And I don't know if Verani is planning on sticking around next season, but like if she were to, would you guys be opposed to further exploring that?
Catch everything.
She's so good.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that we're not talking about it right now, but that doesn't mean it's not a possibility down the road. And you know, I think we're just sort of exploring, like, is there a Kender Pharmaceutical story somewhere in the future that it's still affecting our hospital somehow, and you know, and if it does, are we going to see her again? I thought the little love triangle that you just got little snippets of with the chests and the things like that, I always kind of like that, and felt it added some fun to everything. I hope so.
Yeah, it just felt like so different compared to the relationship she had with Will, that it was nice to see the two like compared and contrast. I don't know, I liked it. That would be my preference, but
she brought the fun out in Ethan, I thought.
In a season where he was really struggling, and I think it was, you know, yeah, I love it.
Diane will be very happy to hear this.
Someone else who kind of came up in Ethan's life this season was Dr. Archer, who obviously has this past with Ethan from the Navy. And I'm curious, like, what did you guys enjoy about that dynamic, exploring that dynamic this season?
Well, President Steve Weber, man, he's just, you know, such a talent. And you know, like we said earlier, in the, you know, in a hospital full of you know, doctors, hero doctors who, you know, we know whether they have a nose for scandal or not, you know, we know that they always are coming from the right place. To have a doctor who can, or a character who can have an agenda, or, you know, provide some. This is fun. It's fun to watch, you know, this guy think, and he's smart and he's crafty, and he's. It just I felt like it added just a whole nother flavor to the end of the season.
Yeah, definitely added something, because his motives have been, like you were kind of just talking about, very questionable since the moment he arrived. I don't know whether to trust him or hate him or both, but I'm curious, like, will we learn what he's like really been up to or about in the season finale?
Well, the finale, he's got a big part in the finale. I don't think you're going to get any big answers to like what's behind it, but I think he's got a like sort of a big, interesting story, and
I think you'll be firmly in his camp,
right?
In the finale.
Yes, I think you're going to come out of that liking him, and then we're going to get to go into next season, where we're a little more on his side, and we can, from that angle, explore some of the stuff you're talking about.
Interesting. So the plan, I guess, is for him to stick around next season, as of now, at least.
Yeah, I know. This is one of those things where that are in negotiation. I think.
Right.
I think it's a mutual. We obviously enjoyed having him on the show, and I think he's really enjoyed, you know, being with the cast and the crew. So hopefully we can bring him back and tell more stories with Archer.
Interesting. I'll be curious, because I don't know of anyone yet who's joined his camp. So I'll be curious to see if I do after Wednesday. Be curious.
You'll be closer to his camp.
Okay.
You'll be camp adjacent.
Okay. We'll see. So I'm not holding out hope, but we'll see.
Very skeptical.
Yeah, I don't trust the guy. I can't. I don't. Not yet, at least. Not yet. So kind of someone else who's had a pretty interesting journey this season is April. I mean, she went from working in the COVID ward, then she helped Will with the trial, and now she's been applying to nurse practitioner programs. Like, what was appealing about telling this story for April this season? Because to me, it really felt like she found herself and like what she wants her place in medicine to be this season.
I mean, I think like starting off in the COVID ward was such a great thing for her, because she got to be a little more than she, you know, had been in previous seasons. Like as a professional, you know, there was much responsibility, you know, in working there, and we're shorthanded and all that. And I think she kind of found herself in that. And like, I enjoyed watching her struggle with, am I going to go back to same old April again and my old life, or am I going to keep climbing and trying to find something, bigger for myself. And, I kind of liked seeing her journey over 6 years. She gave up going to med school way back to put Noah through med school, her brother. And it kind of felt like it came full circle this year as she sort of discovered that, hey, I can do this. And a lot of those stories, watching her see that in herself, it felt very uplifting for me. So I'm happy for her.
Yeah. Did you guys always know that the plan was for her to end up applying to schools and applying to nurse practitioner programs by the end of the season, or was that something you guys kind of figured out as you were writing the season?
The latter, I think.
Good.
Just it started to make more and more sense, but it felt like a natural extension of the arc she was on.
Yeah. So kind of related to April, but this season we got Noah back for one episode, but it ended up with him getting fired. And typically we don't see anyone really fired when they do things that are wrong at Chicago Med. So why did you guys decide to have Noah get fired?
I mean, I love Noah. We were trying, I think it was more a casual telling an Ethan story. And, you're telling Ethan is the new boss, what's the hardest decision he has to make? And I'm sorry, guys. Oh, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. The hardest you could make is have to fire April's brother. It just, there was just so much drama in it. And, it's kind of, any halfway way of doing it just wouldn't have been as good, to really make conflict. It seemed like the thing to do. But, I hated to see Noah go. I love every time he's on the screen. I think he's a riot.
Yeah. I miss Noah too, but he had to be sacrificed for the greater good.
For the greater good of the story. But I am curious though, this may be too technical of a question, but it was something we were wondering. When did Ethan acquire the ability to fire people? I thought Goodwin only had final say in that. Or is now that he's the chief of the ED, he can fire whoever he wants to in the ED?
I don't want to. Well, I don't. I think that. Right. I think more than one person can fire somebody. I guess it's an excellent question.
We've just always seen everyone who when they consider about getting fired, go before Goodwin, and then at this point it was oh, Ethan's firing Noah, and we were wait, what? Since when did Ethan get to fire somebody? Well, I mean, it makes sense, but we were just what?
When you fire a series regular, you have to go to Goodwin.
When you fire anyone else, you get to go to Ethan.
Ethan can do it.
I'll take it.
You're asking all the hard questions.
Like I said, I might have been a little too technical, but it was something we've been wondering. It's been on our mind, so just had to ask. But speaking of Goodwin, I mean, she started off the season working from home, and I'm curious, was it always the plan to have Goodwin work from home, or was that due to Apatha not being able to be on set for whatever reason, or was it always the plan for her to be working from home?
Well, I don't know if it was always we were literally just reacting, in real time to what was going on the ground. So, I think I think we just, it was one of those things where it made sense for both the character and the actor,
mm-hmm.
At the beginning where we were just flying completely blind to tell the story that way. Can't remember what episode she came in on. 4?
Yeah, I was to say, I think it's 4.
Yeah, so we were shooting probably in October, and I think by that time, just the show knew where it was. It just felt like the right time for everybody involved. Goodwin back in.
Another big part of Goodwin's story this season is that she started, working alongside her family because her son started working at the hospital. And I know that obviously wasn't easy on her, and it's just not an easy dynamic in general, but like what made you guys want to further explore that one?
Oh, there you are. Well, I think we tend to, I don't know, I think some of our more successful stories, it's always hard when you're in the hospital, like trying to find that extra level of emotionality and conflict. And, so we've had, at least with Goodwin's character, we've had great mileage out of her relationship with her ex-husband. And I think we introduced Michael at the very end of season 5. Right. So that just felt like a natural like extension, it's always difficult to try to find, ways for the family members to interact in this case, since we were already dealing with a Kender pharmaceutical clinical trial. I think the decision was, made to have Michael, find a spot, somewhere within that same umbrella, and at least someplace that would provide him some, conflict and scenes with his mother.
Would you say that's kind of similar to why you guys decided to explore Dr. Charles and Anna? Because I know she kind of came back into the fold last season, and it obviously was heavily explored this season. Is that kind of similar on why you guys chose to go that route with that story too?
Yeah.
And she's such a good actress. Like we didn't want to stop telling stories about her if we didn't have to. And we were, we didn't get to tell the end of last season, so we just started up with her again this season, and she kept being great. So we kept trying to find ways to get her in there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were surprised by how much that storyline shifted, because it starts off she's kind of a brat, and then by the end it's become like this like beautiful father-daughter relationship. And I personally liked it. But I was just curious if that was kind of the similar idea with the Goodwin and Michael stuff too.
Yeah, Charles is always, he's so good at his job.
Yeah.
And just always has the right answer and the right tool in his toolbox, just to when we can introduce him with family members or people he's more intimate with, and you get to see a more human side. A guy who doesn't, it's not going to have the right answer every time, or even if he does, it's not necessarily going to work. And I think those stories always feel like they work for the character, and for Oliver gets to play a whole another range of emotions. So the more Charles and personal stuff for Charles, the better in my eyes. I love writing for Oliver and that character.
Speaking of Dr. Charles, though, his other kind of big storyline this season revolved around him taking care of Ramona, which, I mean, if I'm being honest, like, we kind of thought was going to end up in, like, a Lifetime serial killer type storyline, which, I mean, we're glad it didn't, but I'm curious, like, what were you guys hoping to achieve with that storyline?
Originally, she was going to be, like, a Lifetime type serial killer.
I mean, that's where I thought it was going.
It was a coin flip.
Yeah, definitely not where I thought it was
going. It was meant to, I think, just throw his relationship with his daughter in some relief. I think there was an original version where their paths crossed. Ramona and his daughter's path crossed a little more. Mm-hmm. Dramatically. So there was a version on the board, and I can't remember, I think maybe the actor's availability or something kind of changed, but now it makes it, hopefully the end, it feels like it was the way we planned it all along.
But I mean, we are done with the Ramona story though, right? Like that's done now.
There's not a zero chance that we'll see her again. There's literally, we haven't planned it, but like the names come up
right
once or twice in the couple weeks we've been on season 7.
Okay, but for now it's done.
Yeah,
for now it's done.
Okay,
yeah, for now it's done.
alrighty. So also in the beginning of the season, we were focused a lot on Maggie and Ben deciding to go through with adopting Augie, but then of course he obviously ends up going to live with his brother's family. Did you guys ever discuss him not leaving and like Maggie and Ben adopting him?
Yeah, we talked about that. It's so hard. So much of our show takes place in the hospital. As we saw with Natalie's son. It's so hard to tell stories about our characters' children. It's just so hard to do it that I think the inclination is to have as few children
as possible.
Because we leave the hospital so infrequently, and it gets hard to keep making excuses for why someone's bringing their kid to the hospital unless they're getting sick. You only do that so many times. So, but it just, in the continuing story of Maggie, her and I sort of logical daughter, and it's all sort of an offshoot of the Augie story. So, it seemed like it created more story to have him go than to have me.
Yeah.
That's fair. But speaking of Ben, I know obviously we didn't get to see a ton of him around this season, which is obviously sad because we love Maggie and Ben. But is that just due to like COVID and not being able to have a ton of guest stars around, or is that kind of similar to what you were saying about with children? It's just hard to tell stories outside of the hospital.
That one probably I think was more due to travel restrictions. Like I believe the actor lives in Los Angeles and flies out, and we tried. I think there was an attempt to try to limit, travel throughout.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But obviously the big kind of storyline for Maggie these last couple episodes has been, she recently found out about this daughter that she gave up for adoption when she was only 16 and has just found out some more information about her. I'm curious, like, what made you guys want to explore that story now?
Well, like I think Jeff just referred to it. It kind of it felt like a natural extension of the Augie arc. To try to like dig deeper on into those parental urges that Maggie doesn't have any children of her own. I think we might have intimated, but certainly it feels like she might have had trouble, with that process, or just hadn't found the right partner.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so once I it's one of those things where you're just talking about the episode where Augie, we're breaking the episode where Augie is going to go off with his his brother, his birth brother, and that family in California, and just finding ways to like amplify what's going on emotionally with Maggie in that moment. And then you're in a room with a bunch of people throwing out ideas, and that one came up and stuck. And then once it's in the bloodstream, you gotta follow through with it.
Yeah. And I mean, even though we don't see Ben, I mean, we're to assume, right, that she's talking about all of this with Ben, and he's 100% supportive of everything she's done so far in terms of this adoption or daughter stuff, right? We're to assume that.
100%. We actually see him in
16.
16, yeah.
And he voices his opinion.
He voices his opinion on this front.
Okay. So speaking of that, though, I mean, Vanessa, we got to meet Vanessa, obviously, and she seems very close to her parents. I mean, does she know that she's adopted? Or did we find that out?
She does know that she's adopted.
Okay.
But we do hear more from her. You'll learn a little bit more in 16. I don't want to give any spoilers.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, kind of going out. I mean, absolutely, we don't know. I don't know, at least let's put it that way. I don't know what's going to happen with Maggie and Vanessa in the season finale. But, and I know obviously stuff is in negotiations, but like, are there plans for her to return in season 7?
I think that's our hope.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I know obviously contracts are still in negotiations, but I guess the hope is that she'll return next season.
Yeah.
So, I have kind of like a random question that has nothing to do with storylines, but I was looking back at the list of episodes this season when we're preparing for this, and I realized that most of the episodes this season are written in pairs. So I'm curious, like, why do you guys write most of them in pairs? Like, that seems like such a dumb question, but I was curious.
No, that's a good question.
Sometimes we ask that question.
You want to handle this one?
Yeah, I just want to know.
We should actually answer it together.
I mean, this season, it did seem a lot easier doing it over Zoom because, normally we're in an office. So if you're writing an episode by yourself, well, I go over to Steve's office and we talk about my episode, we talk about his episode, whatever. But when you're just sitting alone in your house and don't have anybody to talk with, Steve doesn't want me calling him every 20 minutes. So, if you're working with someone and you're talking with them all day, it just like, it gives you a natural person that's in it with you that you can be bouncing things off of. So I think it made it a little bit easier this year.
Yeah, we have done it consistently. Part of it is, sometimes we'll start off and we'll each write individual episodes, like at the beginning of the year, just when we have a little more lead time, and allows us to get like further ahead. And then the production is just so fast and things happen so fast that like we've figured out that the time you save by co-writing an episode, it's a very sophisticated like transportation logistics thing. But somewhere we've figured out that our best strategy for not getting run over by the train is to hold hands with someone and run as fast as you can versus every man for himself.
But it's not always the same writing partner, right? Like, you guys aren't always writing with the same person every time you guys get an episode.
So sometimes it will go by year. I mean, this year I did write with the same partner, and part of that was like a function of Zooming and just like that consistency. But sometimes it really depends on like when people are getting off of their previous assignment, not only writing it, but like prepping it. We didn't go to Chicago, because of COVID, this was the first year that we didn't travel to set. But in the past, when we did, that would complicate things. So there were used to be a lot more moving parts where you would probably switch up partners based on all those things over the course of the year. And this year, I think was just a little more systematic. But I think Jeff, I don't know, I might have been the one consistent partner with Dan Sinclair. I don't know.
Yeah, I wrote with different people. I've written with I think I've written with everybody. We wrote 117 together, right?
We wrote 117 together. I've written one together with Jeff, or no, one or two. Well, I can't remember. We did like 3 of us, right? Did another one?
That wasn't me. That was you, Danny, and Mary Leah.
Yeah, but we in season 1 was crazy. I know we wrote more scripts together, maybe not officially.
Right.
And then I've written one with Eli, and then I think with everybody else. But generally, the people who've been with the show the longest are Jeff, Eli, and myself, and Sephora. So when we have new writers come on, it also helps to pair them up with people who've done it, before. And that's part of the learning, process, the way, how we bring new writers up to speed.
That's cool. Like I said, I was just something I noticed, and I didn't know if that had been a thing that you guys had been doing prior to this season, or I was, it was just something I noticed, and I was just curious. Also kind of another random one. I know every episode title this year, and as it's been in the years past, is as many words as it is, the season. So this year, all the ones were 6 words long. Like, what's gonna happen like when Med gets into double digits? I mean, is each episode title gonna be like as long as a Fall Out Boy song? I mean, like, are you guys just gonna keep sticking with this?
I mean, if that's our biggest problem in season.
Can you imagine like Grey's or Law and Order? We got 20. How do you
SVU up in here with like 20
sentence?
Yeah.
Right, you'll need punctuation.
It'll be like a full sentence. Do you guys get any input in those? Does that come from you guys?
Yeah, we'll take a stab at it. Our Andy and Diane, our showrunners. Diane in particular.
She likes naming.
She likes the challenge. I will tell you, it's odd numbers are easier than even numbers.
So you're saying next season will be easier?
I don't know. I found a lot of construction of things were just like either one word too many or one word too many. I'm very hopeful that 7 is not just a lucky number.
I can say in 6 years of talking to Steve every day, that's one of the more unusual things I've heard him say. I've never noticed the even versus odd. That's very interesting. I gotta go back now. I'm gonna say a bunch of sentences and then write them down and see words.
I'm gonna think about how many words are in my sentences from now on every time I say them.
Yeah, I know. It's fascinating.
Okay, so we've got kind of a fun one to kind of start to wrap things up. So we've been discussing this for a little bit. We even had Derek on the pod last week, and we had him share his, but we want to hear from you guys. So using any one Chicago character from any of the shows, you have to give me your one Chicago pub quiz team and your one Chicago zombie apocalypse team.
Wow.
So pub quiz team is you and 5 other people.
Characters, right? Not actors.
Characters, yes.
Well, you got to take Charles on your pub quiz team, right?
I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah.
Zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, like if you had to survive a zombie apocalypse, who from One Chicago would you want with you?
I mean, definitely. Well, see, that's a tough one. Strategically, I'm going to want a lot of firemen and policemen, not very many of our doctors.
Well,
I want one doctor.
Ethan Choi.
Right.
Has been on the front line as a medic. I mean, it's hard to argue against him unless you think like there's a wild card, I don't know enough about zombies to know, like, maybe that's not the right answer.
Well, you need someone that's going to be able to treat our people, right? So that's, Ethan's going to be able to fight and treat, and he's got that combat experience. But then after him, I don't want any of our guys, like med people, doing any of the fighting. We want the guys with the axes and the guns. I mean, it's a hard. I'm also trying to think pub quiz. I'm stumped. Who did Derek say, by the way? That's what I want.
Man, Derek decided on. He said Dr. Charles for his pub quiz team. Mm-hmm. He went with Jay Halstead and Matt Casey, Sylvie Brett, and I'm trying to think who his other one was.
He got to name 4 different people for the zombie apocalypse.
And then he went with Severide on his zombie apocalypse. He went Ethan. Or I think he also threw Connor Rhodes in there.
For the zombie apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. He did. I'm trying to remember who else. He also went with one of his minor characters so that he could like feed him to the zombies.
It feels like he didn't really make any tough choices. He just named it.
He just kept naming people.
I mean, hey, if it works, it works. So I figured I'd ask this like one final question to kind of wrap things up. I mean, we're just a few days out from this point, from the season finale. So I wonder if you guys could tease it in 5 words.
Well, 5 is going to be easier for Steve than 6.
Hold on to your hats.
Oh, Jesus.
Someone's going to get hurt bad.
Yeah, I mean, that promo's got me nervous. With Ethan getting shot, I mean, that promo's got me nervous.
It should. That's its design. Is to engender a response from you. Did you believe what was exactly, can you tell me what exactly was in the promo?
It's a lot of Ethan getting shot and then Archer saying some stuff. It looks like Archer's going to have a choice in what surgery Ethan has. I don't, something along those lines is the promo.
Okay. So it was pretty much on that was the
yes, that storyline is like what it's focused on. Ethan getting shot.
That covers it. That's happening.
Oh, Jesus.
There are even more surprises.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready for these finales. I'm not ready. All right, guys. Well, those are all the questions that I had. Thank you guys so much again for always doing this. We really appreciate it and love having you guys on.
Yeah, we love being here.
Yeah.
I know neither one of you are really on social media, but if you guys have anything else you would like to plug, if you want to plug your Twitter accounts, I know Jeff is kind of on his, Steven is never on his.
No, it's
I'm much better at baking this year. That's all I got.
I just opened an Instagram account, but I haven't posted anything yet.
Wow.
I'm 10 years behind the curve? I
was gonna say that's a big step up, Twitter to Instagram.
Yeah.
We're gonna follow you.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
For you to never post anything, but we're still gonna follow you.
And when I'm ready, I'm just gonna come full blast. I'm working up a whole. Just want to make sure I have enough ammunition, so I just keep it.
You got to work up to that. I see how it is. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on again, and I guess we will see you guys next year. We'll do this all over again next year.
Sounds good.
Look forward to it.